Let's talk about confidence and motivation levels, which I'm sure you've realized people are always on a spectrum. They either have low confidence or perhaps even too much confidence, and they're, not overperforming, but they might not be helping themselves. What can people do to raise their confidence or motivation levels in the right way?
That's a very interesting question. And I feel I think motivation is a different game and confidence is a different game. So we'll tackle them one at a time. I feel like for confidence, self-confidence, they say that 25 to 50% of confidence levels come from genetics, actually. So it's a mix of nature and nurture. The experiences you've had and the way or the genes you carry, right, that do affect your confidence ability and the way you show up. So I think one thing is acknowledging that where do you stand right now, right? Second, I feel like I was actually working with about 100, women scholars back in India to create a program where we would help them raise their confidence levels. And if you think about it, these are women scholars. They are really accomplished humans, right? And yet they were suffering with massively low levels of confidence. So the one thing I realized was success is not proportional to higher self-belief or self-confidence. Sometimes you can have such a high level of imposter syndrome that you are showing up to every single room thinking you're not good enough. Right?
Yeah.
And the program that I built for them, and I continue to use that as a self-coaching tool for myself. It's basically it's called the 5D framework, which begins with so it's called discovery. That's the first D, which is all about starting from strength. Nothing great was ever built on weakness. So start with acknowledging where you're good or what makes you different from the million people around you. That can happen through sitting across from someone close and asking your close ecosystem or confidants what they think is your biggest differentiator and how you add to their life. It could be through even strength assessment tools like the Gallup Strength Survey or anything. Multiple free ones as well, right? As a student, I'm constantly figuring out the free ones. So whatever you can find. And so start from a place of strength. That's one. Second, I would say, is about detoxification. And that is very important. Detoxing from limiting beliefs. And these limiting beliefs are at 3 levels. One is how are you perceiving yourself in a limiting way? That's the first thing. Second is, how do you feel people are perceiving you in a limiting way? And that's the funny thing. You could walk out of a room being actually confident, but the moment somebody around you, gives you a certain look, you feel, oh my God, he thinks I'm talking fluff. And then that confidence loop or spiral begins, that low confidence loop, it starts beginning. So the second is detoxifying from limiting beliefs by actually naming them to tame them, right? Write them down or talk about them so that you can begin to put a name to each of these beliefs or mindsets. Third, I would say, is about developing or devising a new narrative. Start to look around you and ask yourselves, which humans around me inspire me in terms of confidence? It's not necessary that it has to be an extrovert who's extremely expressive. You could find inspiration in an extremely introverted human who shares such insight whenever she speaks, right? So really, role models are not created equal. We both could have extremely different role models, right? Even in this moment. So ask yourself who inspires you and start to figure out what in them is, what do you want to imbibe? It's not about imitating another, but it's about what do I want to imbibe in that person? And basis that, develop a new narrative for yourself. For many of these women, Malala or Michelle Obama, these were the kind of roles, or even Martin Luther King. There were women who said, my role model is Martin Luther King Jr. And that girl, she actually created an entire reframing narrative of hers where she said, that's the kind of impact that I want to aim for in this life. And that really helped to build her confidence. And the last one is declare. Share your story with other people.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? Because there is no substitute for doing the real thing, honestly. And sharing, and the more you share your story, whether it be in writing or through the spoken word or the written word. Or on YouTube. Right? It really reinforces your own belief in yourself and the world's belief in you.
Yeah, absolutely. I really like that. So first of all, unshackle yourself from the things that are holding you back.
Yes.
And then think about what you can do on top of that to, help reinforce all of the positives, so you keep them and you don't lose them because of that unshackling process before, and then you share that with the world. Because I think a lot of studies do show that, you know, by teaching other people, we tend to retain more information, and we keep those habits throughout life.
Absolutely.
So Divya, if someone has a aim of presenting to, let's say, 300 people, and they've never done that before, but it's part of their job, so they must do it, how should that person muster up the courage or the confidence that it takes to do something like that?
Okay. So I think the first thing here, Rosin, would be to really start to remove the myth that you need to be a certain kind of human to be a good public speaker, right? Like in the world, of course, we've seen a lot more stories of people who are expressive, extroverted, out there with their hand gestures, and we just see them as enigmatic examples of speakers. Absolutely. But and I was doing this research on sort of the most legendary communicators over time, and it was really surprising that more than 50% were introverted humans.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, I was actually very surprised.
More than 50%?
More than 50% were introverted, right? Yeah. Like you have Gandhi or Abraham Lincoln, and you know, all these humans were actually fairly introverted in the way they show up to the world, and yet because they actually leveraged that introversion instead of trying to imitate someone they're not. So I think the first thing I would say is start to find your unique style, which is rooted in who you are, because who you are is very different from another, and don't try to imitate that, right? The second is don't look at that speech or that presentation or that keynote as a performance. Okay. Try and shift your mindset to looking at it as a conversation. Right? Yeah. Because when you're conversing, you're a lot more authentic and real. Yeah. It's much harder when you think that you are performing on stage. Yeah. And I think the next thing I would say, apart from finding your style and moving from performance to conversation, would be find your story. The real substance of the matter lies in the story you share. And I remember when I was beginning my stint as a creative writer, and I do that in the diversity equity space mostly. What I asked myself was a lot of what, let's say, a George Orwell asks himself, where he says, why do I write? Yeah. Ask yourself, why are you writing? Why are you speaking here? What is so important, a message that you need to get out there to the world? Ask yourself almost those 5 whys, because I think when the why for you is sharpened and clearer, you're a lot more passionate to bring that story to the world. So, So
would you say you focus on what is pulling you to the stage rather than someone who's pushing you to the stage?
Oh gosh. I mean, you put it beautifully. So that's exactly it. Find your style, find your story, and find your strength.
Yeah, absolutely. It's very amazing that over 50% of the people that are, considered good presenters tend to be introverts. Would you say extroverts tend to overthink things? What differences have you found between extrovert presenting and an introvert presenting?
Okay, so I think the first extremely interesting thing I found is it's all in the balance of energy. Sometimes with extroverts, there is so much energy that they are channeling that it can get too much for the audience. And for me, over the years as a communicator, my biggest challenge has been to follow the principle of less is more. Yeah. That's not what an introvert should be following, because for him or her, more is more. The training, is more about not exaggerating themselves, but leveraging that quiet strength that belongs to them. Yeah. In fact, the biggest strength I've found, which I feel both can really learn from one another. One thing extroverts can really learn from introverts is their ability to be comfortable with awkward pauses and silences. This is something that extroverts may not be good at because they continue to fill pauses. Yeah. And pauses create greatness in speeches, right? And they build suspense, they build real impact. And that's something I've actually learned from a lot of my introverted students that I've coached, where I just looked at them and I said, wow, you're brave enough to be so awkward. I would like to use that. I would like to leverage that because I'm constantly filling up pauses, right? Yes. So I think both have different struggles and both have different strengths, and I feel they can really learn from one another.
Right, that's very interesting. I think you have touched on a point which I have faced myself, when making videos. Pauses feel unnatural to me, but they might be more natural to other people. In fact, they might be important to other people. They might need that. They don't need a constant barrage of information coming their way.
Exactly, gosh, yes.
Usually, I feel like success is all about how you present yourself. At least in business, this is what I've observed. Sometimes it's less so about what you know and what you're actually even doing. Are you even delivering value? People tend to focus more on how was that thing delivered. Do you agree that influencers are usually not the smartest people in the room?
I think that smart is a very controversial sort of, it can be defined in so many ways. I look at this in, I think, two ways. One is stories and substance. And I feel you need both to succeed. Having substance, but not being able to form a compelling story or share a compelling story with the world, could come to your demerit, right? And it could come at a cost of that substance even, that you're not really able to share it with the broader audience. I feel influencers are smart in a way that they know how to make what they are doing extremely compelling to the world. However, if it lacks substance, it's only going to be a quick win. It's not going to last. Lasting influence only comes when there is stories, compelling stories, backed by true substance. So I feel like, yes, the influencer who has substance and can create compelling stories out of it is actually the smartest person in the room.
Right. But what about the person who has, let's say, no knowledge in anything at all, but they are faking it, you know, and at some point they do make it. They do understand how things are done, perhaps through just interacting with smart people. Basically what I'm doing here, talking to people like yourself until I learn how to do things myself. Do you agree in that narrative that that can be done?
I think that's actually, like, we live in a world where there aren't linear models of success, right? We have professions like bed testers who literally just, you know, figure out how a bed should be created and whether it's comfortable enough, and they're paid millions for that. I was quite surprised to learn why I'm not doing that yet, but maybe post MBA. But I think the one thing that I've figured out, even working with clients, is you bring your unique self to the life you create, right? And that life could be its own little messy maze. And every messy maze looks very different. It may even lead to similar destinations. We all made it here to the same classroom. And yet, look at the journeys we've taken. And after this also, we'll take many different journeys. I think even that model, like you said, as long as the person is faking it to make it, and there is a slightly clear semblance of a destination where he or she wants to go. And second, she's actually being able to ask for help from people around her and learn from them. I think that's actually quite brave. A lot of people think they have to go it alone. And that's not true. You can really stand on the shoulders of giants and be bigger and be better. So I feel if somebody has leveraged the art of learning from another, and there are really wise and smart people giving them time to speak to them, as something in that human that's pulling other people towards them. So even in that narrative, I see strength.
Yeah, absolutely.